The Premier League is over. From the 5th of August to the 28th of May, 38 games have been played. But before we can close the book on this season, we have one final day to talk about. Yes, the final day of the Premier League, and we're going to be going through it, all of the emotion, all of the drama, all of the excitement here in this episode of the recap. So strap yourselves in, grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a snack, and let's talk the final day of the Premier League season. Before we do, please like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Without further ado, let's talk the final day of the Premier League. What better place to start than the bottom of the table, the relegation battle, and Everton, whether they like it or not, whether it's by sheer will and determination, fate, or just some luck, they have managed to stay in the Premier League for yet another season. They won the game by 1-0 against the Bournemouth side, which were pretty lacklustre, if we're completely honest, but Everton are not going to be caring about that one jot. If you would have given an Everton fan a win at the end of today, regardless of how they got it, they would have bitten your hand off, because it means Premier League survival. Yes, they are staying in the Premier League, and we're going to be talking about how they did it right now. First of all, we need to mention that they played a back three. It meant that they ended up playing a 3-4-2-1, which is very interesting, especially considering the profile of play that Sean Dyche has at his disposal. James Tarkowski, Conor Cody, and Yerry Mina were their back three. Mina's very tall, Tarkowski isn't too short himself, and then Conor Cody is very good in the air. Automatically, you have physical presence against the likes of a Dominic Solanke or a Kiefer Moore if he was ever to come off the bench, which he ended up doing. James Garner out at right wing back I thought was one of the more interesting and strange choices, but you know what you're going to get with James Garner. Even though he's more of a central midfielder, he can do a job out at right wing back, and also it's again adding height into the box whenever you're defending corners. You can't be letting easy, cheap set piece goals in, and that's where I think the thinking was. Make sure you're physically dominant, make sure you're tall, make sure you can win aerial duels, and that is where Everton got a lot of their success. Idris Gana and Abdoulaye Doucouré have been quite good together generally. Onana and Iwobi just a little bit further forward, but also they have the ability to come back whenever they need to, and Dwight McNeil has always been a good servant for Sean Dyche whenever he's been around. Demarai Gray is the major big question mark in this team. He had a couple of chances, but it failed to really take them, and really when you look at the team, it's a surprise how they've managed to get some of the goals, considering the lack of forward-thinking options that they've had. I would talk about Bournemouth, and I can talk about Bournemouth, but really they were pretty much on the beach. Sorry, they just didn't have anything really going forwards, and while they did start to huff and puff later on in the second half, it really didn't amount to anything. Ryan Christie, I thought, had a pretty poor game, but that being said, Dominic Solanke made himself known. Apart from that, they defended quite well, and Travers made a couple of decent saves. If we have a look at the average positions, you can see that Everton were actually quite well spaced out. I thought that James Garner out on this left-hand side did a good job defensively, even though he tried to get forward somewhat. I thought that Onana and Iwobi did a good job of trying to support the likes of Demarai Gray whenever he needed to, and then you had that midfield presence here. The back three dropping into this V shape that Sean Dyche likes so much as well in midfield. It just made Everton that little bit more difficult to break down. It meant that they could circulate the ball a little bit better. All in all, they were physically dominant, they were physically present in the match, and that helped them to no end. Let's finally have a look at some of the statistics, because we have some other games to be going over, and we can see that Everton managed to win most of their tackles. They won most of their duels, most of their aerials, and that's where the game was won or lost, wasn't it? In the duels won, in the major part of the game when they needed to win the duels, Everton wanted the game more, Everton wanted the win more, Everton wanted to stay in the Premier League. Bournemouth unfortunately didn't have all too much to play for, but that played into Everton's hands, and they ended up winning 1-0, and Everton are safe. Up next, let's talk about Leicester. They won the game by 2-1, but it wasn't enough for them, and they are unfortunately out of this year's, or next year's I should say, Premier League season. Let's try and break the game down as much as we possibly can, even though we know that Leicester are gone. I actually thought, unfortunately, that Leicester played a pretty good game. I thought that Harvey Barnes out on this left-hand side was finally starting to show a little bit of form. They decided to move James Maddison out to the right-hand side, play more two central defensive midfielders, and then push Yuri Tielemans on a little bit. This was the right move, I think. It meant that they had a little bit more balance across the width of the pitch. They weren't just looking to this left-hand side, and and really, when Maddison ended up coming inside, it made it difficult for the likes of Cresswell to stop following the runs. I thought Iheanacho did a decent job as well of holding up play and bringing others into play, allowing Leicester to have a bit more of a foothold in the match. Harvey Barnes scored a fantastic goal, and then you had Wout Faes making it 2-0, and when it was 2-0, Everton were 0-0, it started to feel like it was going to be their day. But unfortunately, that was not the case for Leicester. If we have a look at some of the average positions, you can see that they actually, again, played quite a good game, a wide game, forward-thinking, attacking. Now, Tielemans drops a little bit deeper, but he did get forwards a little bit more. You had Soumare and you had Barnes dropping a little bit deeper as well. Dewsbury Hall pushing on next to the likes of Harvey Barnes, and then Maddison picking up the ball as well, making those through balls into the forward-thinking attacking areas. And West Ham, well, I thought West Ham played okay, to be honest. They could have had a couple of other chances, but really, when you look at what they wanted to do on the balance of play, they have other games to play for. They have that Europa Conference League final they're going to be focused on, and really they didn't really need to do too much in this match. If we have a look at some of the statistics, you can see that West Ham really dominated the game, and that was pretty fine, but I thought Leicester had a good account of themselves, really. And what could you ask for more than to win the last game of the season? If we're completely honest, they didn't lose or didn't get relegated off of the back of this game. It was off of the back of several other extremely poor performances where they let in too many goals. And unfortunately, this result just came a little bit too late for the Foxes, who were going to need to go back, reset in the Championship once more. And now we say goodbye to Leeds United, who, if we're completely honest, have not been good enough this season at all. The idea of bringing in Sam Allardyce for the last 4 games of the season was a bold one, and I think it got a lot of people thinking that maybe Big Sam might be able to do the unthinkable, but it just was a bit too much for him. And really, when you have a look at this Leeds defence, the fact that they've conceded 78 goals, a Premier League high this season, is just nowhere near good enough. I mean, some of the players just aren't really fit to be in a Premier League side. You've got to question what Luke Ayling is doing a lot of the time. Christensen doesn't really seem like the greatest of signings. I think Liam Cooper has passed it to a certain extent. Wöber isn't really being helped, and Strauch should not be out playing left wing back. Then you have a look at Jack Harrison, who's quite good. I thought Robin Koch was okay in the centre of the park as well. Forshaw is a bit slow for my opinion, and then you have Weston McKennie out on this right hand side, just not really adding all too much to the centre of the park. I also don't think it helps the fact that he's on loan. He doesn't really care whether Leeds get relegated or not, because his manager who originally brought him in is no longer there. Then you have Rodrigo, who striking problems Leeds have had for quite a while. And if we have a look at some of these average positions, I've got to say, if we have a look at this now, we can see this is the Leeds back 3. What is this? Look at the difference between the two centre-backs. Now, if you're Leeds and you've conceded 78 goals this season, you would have thought you would have attempted to just close up shop a little bit, make sure you're a little bit more difficult to beat, make sure that Tottenham can't play through you, because even though they haven't been having the greatest of season themselves, you know that you need to win the game and you need to keep it close, you need to keep it tight. They failed to do that, and it's no wonder why they failed to do that with defensive organisation like this. Shocking. But when we have a look at some of the Tottenham attacking play, I think they are actually quite good. I saw Ryan Mason come out at the end of the game saying that's how he wants them to play and how he wants them to go forwards, and you can't really blame him, can you? Harry Kane got 2 very good goals, albeit due to Leeds' self-destruction. Lucas Moura did a very good job of running through that Leeds defence, but again, he ran through essentially nothing because none of them tried to put in any kind of defensive tackles. Pedro Porro scored a very good goal, but could Joel Robles have done better? Probably. And really, it just ends on Tottenham being a better side, yes, but really, Leeds were woeful. Tottenham, what are they going to think about their season? It's going to be back to the drawing board again. They need to find a manager. They need to find a director of football. And until they do that, you can't see them moving forward at all. If we have a look at some of the statistics before we end, you can see that the expected assists was higher for Leeds, but Tottenham were the team that really managed to pull forwards. 19 shots, 2 on target. That sums up Leeds entirely, doesn't it, really? And then you scroll down a little bit further and see that while they did win some of their aerials more than Tottenham, they lost their major duels. Tottenham wanted it more, and that is a sorry state of affairs when you've got a team vying for relegation. Leeds need to go back, need to reset. You heard some fans chanting that you're not fit to wear the shirt, and unfortunately in some instances I think you've got to agree with them. They need to look at themselves, the players, they need to look at themselves, the board, and they need to reset and go again. Sorry to say goodbye, Leeds, but I'll be looking forward to seeing you again in the future. Let's move ourselves on to something a little bit brighter, a little bit lighter, and Aston Villa have achieved European football. They will be in the Europa Conference League after they have managed to finish 7th in the Premier League table following a 2-1 victory over Brighton and Hove Albion. And really, what a turnaround Unai Emery has had with this Aston Villa side. When you think about where Steven Gerrard left them, I believe they were in 14th position. They were something along the lines of 11 or 12 points away from Chelsea. And to think that they ended up being 11 or 12 points ahead of Chelsea come the end of the season, it is just absolutely sensational. Douglas Luiz has become a man reborn. We knew he had quality, but really Unai Emery has been able to unlock that potential. Ollie Watkins looks like the striker we always knew he could be, and Jacob Ramsey is really starting to come in the side as one of the in-form young players of the season. Leon Bailey even is starting to do a little bit more defensive work, as we can see from the players' average positions, which we have a look at in just a second. Tactically, they just look like a different outfit. And really, when you have a look at this, you can see the back three, or the back four, I should say, three of the back four, one pushing on going forwards. You have Leon Bailey tracking back, doing a little bit more defensive work. John McGinn moving over to this left-hand side to create balance with the likes of Jacob Ramsey. Ollie Watkins making himself difficult to play against as that central striker. And then you have your main midfield pivot. It's just very good positioning. And this is the sign of a well-trained, well-drilled team. They respect him, they understand what he wants, and they have gained themselves European football. That is fantastic for Aston Villa. As for Brighton, they didn't really have all too much to play for, did they? When we have a look at their team, we know how Brighton play, we know how they set up. They are fantastic going forwards, they're very good defensively as well, and they keep the ball. But really, they didn't have too much to go for, and although they got a goal back, it really seemed like it was Aston Villa's game. As it can be seen by the statistics, we can see that Aston Villa had a 2.85 expected goals compared to Brighton's 1.35, 60% possession, although Aston Villa had most of the chances, and they were really well worth their victory. And you can't normally say that against a team like Brighton all too many times, but they were very, very good. If we finally have a look at the duels won, they had 10 more duels won than Brighton. That shows how much Aston Villa desperately wanted to get some kind of European football back to Villa Park. It was just absolutely sensational, winning their aerial duels as well. It's a fantastic achievement, as you can see here. Brighton and Aston Villa both making Europe. What a season both of them have had. We'll be going over that in just a second. But Aston Villa have made the Europa Conference League. They have made 7th place. And Unai Emery has done an absolute wonder with this club back in Europe. Aston Villa fans, I want you to let me know how you're feeling. It's got to be fantastic. And finally, let's finish off our Premier League season by going through the rest of the matches and then talking about the final standings. We have Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest staying in the Premier League. Crystal Palace have managed to stabilise their season as well. Roy Hodgson has done absolutely amazing, as has Steve Cooper. And the faith shown in Steve Cooper needs to be a lesson to other Premier League clubs that sometimes it doesn't always pay off to swap the manager. Sometimes you need to have a bit of faith, and that's exactly what Nottingham Forest had with Steve Cooper, and he has paid them back tenfold by keeping them in the Premier League. If we have a look at some of the statistics, we can see that Crystal Palace really did dominate this game, but honestly, it was a game of two sides very happy with their position, very happy with where they wanted to end, and that is in the Premier League. We know about the relegated candidates, and now let's talk about Arsenal against Wolves. 5-0 is a huge scoreline. 3-0 at half-time is massive. Arsenal needed to show some face after their poor run of results. After dropping the title, they needed to show something to their fans at the end of the season. Wolves didn't really have all too much to play for, did they? And I know that's not really any excuse for losing a game 5-0, but when you have a look at what Lopetegui did with this Wolves side, he made sure their home form was particularly difficult to play against. They were amazing at home, and yes, that's come at a cost of their away form, and really it's not good enough to be losing 5-0, but I think if you're a Wolves fan and you told them that they were going to stay up, they were going to have really good home form, they were going to be fine with 5 weeks to go, or 4 or 5 weeks to go, but you'd be hit by Brighton and Arsenal, I think you would have taken that come the end of the season. Wolves need to go back, Wolves need to reset, find out what's going on with their manager, and try to bounce back and go back to that top half of the Premier League table. As for Arsenal, it's more of the same, isn't it? They need additions, they need huge acquisitions, and really, this game was not even a contest if we're completely honest. Yes, the possession might have been the same, but the expected goals and expected against are far different from each other, and really 14 shots, 8 on target. Wolves didn't have a single shot on target the entire game. It's not good enough. It's not. I'm not condoning it, but there are mitigating circumstances, and context is sometimes needed when looking at these games. 49 duels, 45. It's difficult. It's difficult. They need to go back to the drawing board, Wolves. Arsenal need to go and sign some players. Will they? Time will tell. Stay tuned for the transfer activity, which will be happening over the summer, because we'll be covering every inch of it. So stay tuned for that. Newcastle and Chelsea. Newcastle have had a sensational season. Chelsea, we know what Chelsea have had. They have not had a sensational season at all, have they? It has not been good enough whatsoever. Pochettino is coming through the door. Will he make all the difference? That is the question. But in this game, it really was a game of just two teams very happy again. It's one of those games, both of them are kind of on the beach. Both of them didn't really have anything to play for. It's concerning that Chelsea, with all of their domination, with all of their possession, only managed to score an own goal through Kieran Trippier. That's both a compliment to Newcastle in the way they were able to defend, and also, it's just Chelsea's season, isn't it? They huff and they puff, but they will never blow the house down, and they need to change that fast. Let's continue moving on. Southampton 4, Liverpool 4. We're not going to be seeing Southampton again. What a shame. I really like Southampton. I've got a soft spot for them. They've produced some amazing players, but I think this season was a little bit too much for them. We'll be having a video, or a series of videos coming out, talking about what went wrong in the Premier League season for the relegated teams. And really, Southampton is a doozy. They invested far too much in youth. They made some horrendous managerial swaps, and in the end, that cost them. Liverpool have not had a good season at all. Europa League football is beckoning, and after this crazy result, which does happen on the end of a season, it can happen, and they're going to be wanting to reset again. They dominated this game, but did they? Because it was a draw. Southampton had more shots on target. Liverpool had 22 shots missed, which is quite something after 70% possession. Just a crazy, crazy end of a season game where Roberto Firmino will be saying goodbye, as will James Milner, to the Anfield crowd. Southampton, again, need to reset. They need to go again. And I think they might be fine. They could be fine. We might be seeing them next year, or the season after next year, if you know what I mean. Liverpool are going to need to make some acquisitions like every other club to be able to bounce themselves back into the Champions League. Brentford, Man City. Brentford have done the double over Man City, and they are the only side to have done so. Madness, really. Thomas Frank has done an unbelievable job at the club. Whether you like him or not, he has done sensational. And yes, Man City made some changes. Yes, Haaland isn't playing. Yes, the likes of De Bruyne isn't playing. I understand all this. But really, Man City have a fantastic squad. They have a fantastic team. And Brentford getting this win is huge. Honestly, huge. It is just unbelievable. And really, when you have a look at the stats and really the attacking momentum bar, Brentford gave it a good go. Very, very impressive by them. Statistics. Yes, City dominated, but Brentford ended up coming out with the win. What more can you say about that? Man United and Fulham. Manchester United achieving third. Fantastically. Unbelievably. That's crazy. Fulham are just going under the radar a little bit for me. People are not taking them seriously, and I don't understand why. They've done unbelievably well this season. They are a promoted team. We forget about that. They are a promoted side, and they've ended up finishing just perfect. Nobody was worried about Fulham getting relegated, and everyone, nearly everyone, had them relegated at the start of the season. It was crazy. Now we can have a look at the stats. Manchester United dominated this game, although Fulham did have a penalty saved, and that could have changed the arc of the game dramatically. Manchester United not winning their duels, Fulham winning more of their aerial duels, and really, that's a lot of Mitrovic, really, isn't it? It was a game of the end of the season. Both teams didn't really have all too much to be fighting towards, didn't really have all too much to be going towards. Manchester United had that home advantage, and they managed to create the better opportunities. Fred needs to be mentioned in this, I might add. because Fred played one of the passes of this season. I think it was a pass through round to Bruno Fernandes, who was running through in on goal, chips the keeper. It was unbelievable, just fantastic. Jadon Sancho getting on the board again. Is he going to have his breakout season in the Manchester United shirt next season once Erik ten Hag has been able to actually incorporate him into the side for a full season? Time will tell. This Manchester United side is going to need revamping though, as is every other side. But we are sleeping on Fulham, honestly. People, we are sleeping on Fulham. They have done unbelievably well. No one has thought that they could have done it at the start of the season, and they've managed to get over the line. They've done more than that. They were challenging for Europe at one point. That is madness. Fulham, we need to remember Fulham. Finally, let's have a look at the Premier League table. Southampton, Leeds and Leicester are our teams that have left us. We will be seeing them possibly in the future, but really it just hasn't been good enough. When you have a look at 78 goals conceded by Leeds, when you have a look at 73 goals conceded by Southampton, they just can't score goals as well. 25 points amassed is just, it's not good enough. Then we can move up the table. We have the likes of Everton, Forest, Bournemouth, West Ham, Wolves. After their season of being bottom at Christmas, they finished 13th. That is an unbelievable job by Julian Lopetegui. It really, really is. Just sensational home form has managed to keep them up. We move forwards. Wolves are actually only 3 points behind Chelsea. Can you believe it? Chelsea are going to be looking to bounce back next season, as will the likes of Tottenham Hotspur. Crystal Palace will be looking upwards rather than downwards, and Fulham are going to be having a more difficult season. Second season syndrome is a thing, but if anything, they could look at their London neighbours in Brentford and see how well they've done in their second season. Brentford have been fantastic, I think. Aston Villa making European football, Brighton making European football, Liverpool dropping out of the Champions League and going into the Europa League. What a story. Liverpool have had a horrendous season. Can they bounce back? Of course they can. Jurgen Klopp is going to want to be rebuilding this side with a lot more changes. Newcastle United are going to be looking for investment now that they have made Champions League football after finishing in the top four. Manchester United have another trophy to play for at the time of recording, and they need to go again in the transfer market to make sure they can sustain themselves as a top four side. Is that a one-hit wonder for Erik ten Hag, or is it the beginning of something a little bit more? Arsenal ran Man City well, but they didn't have the squad depth. They didn't have the mentality to really push on and beat the juggernaut that is this Manchester City side. Who are your champions? They are first. They have won 5 out of the last 6 Premier League titles. And my question to you before we end is the Premier League a farmers' league? Is Manchester City the dominant force? And will they be the dominant force while Pep Guardiola is still here? Or is the Premier League still as competitive as ever? Leave me your thoughts in the comment section below. And before we end, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Thank you for watching.